Maggie, what was it like in court today?
It's surreal every day, but I would say that the strangest moment came toward the end of the day. And it was a rough day of testimony. Keith Davidson, the former lawyer for Stormy Daniels, testified for a long time. And Trump's lawyers actually did get some dings into him on cross-examination. It got very tense. He got very flustered. He ended up sounding pretty weaselly as he was giving answers. But prosecutors played these exchanges that Cohen secretly taped. One was with Keith Davidson, and then the other was Michael Cohen and Trump, which you just played. And that tape is basically what jurors were left with as the most dramatic testimony for the day. There was some other not particularly interesting testimony at the very end, as you say, from a custodian of records, basically saying that he had checked out Cohen's phone and that it was all forensically true that this material came from it. But we still don't really know what the jury thinks, and I think that's really important to bear in mind. Because
You described the Cohen-Trump recording as a doozy.
Well, I mean, look, we've heard this tape for...
Which, again, is a legal term.
So, right. Thank you for clarifying for me. It's been 6 years, almost to the day, that we know about this tape, and so it's obviously not new to us, but I think when you are hearing it, A, as a juror, and B, in the context of that courtroom, it just sounded very different, particularly at a time when Trump's lawyers were arguing that this was essentially all just Keith Davidson and Michael Cohen. They didn't make this argument explicitly, but they were leaning into the idea that these two were just freelancing, and that Davidson was essentially extorting Trump. And so that didn't get dispelled from that tape, but the idea that Trump didn't know would have.
It's also the first time that the jury has heard from Trump.
That's right.
Because, I mean, we see him talk going into the court, coming out of the court, saying things that aren't true, as you just showed there, even though Todd Blanche's attorney shook his head yes when Trump
Right, the idea that he's not allowed to testify is ridiculous.
It's not true. And Trump looked to him for affirmation, and he shook his head yes. But in the courtroom, Trump is very quiet. He whispers to his attorney, something that they were kind of annoyed about, it sounded like today when it's reported how often they're speaking. But you can't hear what he's saying. And for the most part, he has his eyes closed a lot during the prosecution asking questions of the witnesses. He was watching as Keith Davidson was being cross-examined today. But this is really the first time the jury has actually heard Trump's voice, which I think is what makes that tape so remarkable.
There's so many elements of that tape to analyze, and if you're the juror and you're going home for the night and you're replaying it in your mind, maybe some of them have heard it before. To Maggie's point, it's been out there for a while, but first, just the fact that it exists, I think, is incredibly notable. Michael Cohen's tone in the call is also incredibly notable. Trump then kind of correcting him about the means of funding this thing, that strikes out to you immediately, that he wants it to be in cash, not financed, quote unquote. What? There's so many elements of it that if you're just from a human perspective, not a legal perspective, that replays in my mind. I imagine the jurors would be thinking about all of those aspects of it as they're trying to analyze that tape.
Let's hear from the lawyers.
But what I think today we saw almost for the first time is there is a coherent theory of the defense in this case. You know, you may not buy it and the jury may not buy it, but the theory here is that Michael Cohen and Keith Davidson cooked up a profit-making scheme to get money out of Donald Trump on the eve of the election. And by the way, Michael Cohen made over $400,000 out of this scheme, which he got later, in 2017. And, that's the defense here. It's not crazy, and it may yet be refuted by the prosecution, but at least it is a theory of why Donald Trump is innocent.
You taking my job?
What? Yes.
Is that a defense?
I'm just trying to be accurate.
My role here? What's up?
No, I'm trying to be fair.
So since you did my job for me, Anderson, the part that I'm still struggling with is that an individual who was the president of the United States, who wants to be the president of the United States, said something as really so foolish that I can't testify because of this gag order. As a citizen, I'll take my hat off as the defense attorney. As a citizen, that's scary, actually. I mean, you learn that in like 6th or 7th grade, right? You have a constitutional right to defend yourself. You learn about Miranda rights. Anything you say can be held against you. And look, I feel my heart goes out to Todd Blanche, who I don't know, you do, but you're in that position, and Trump is such an overpowering presence, and he says something ridiculous like that, and your instinct is to protect him, but you want to correct him, and that's a disaster.
Really? So what?
I mean, he didn't even attempt
It's
to
a ridiculous
correct him.
statement, but it doesn't impact the
Yeah,
trial.
right.
No, it doesn't impact the trial, but
Let me talk about this tape for a minute, because that to me is maybe the single most important piece of evidence in this case. This is the tape Michael Cohen made secretly of Donald Trump when Michael Cohen was the lawyer and Donald Trump was the client in 2016. I
Which
promise.
shows you a lot about Michael Cohen's confidence in his client.
And hear it in his voice.
So that's the first place I was going to start. And I have scrutinized this tape. I have listened to it. I have a piece coming out on it tomorrow. I've listened to every word of it. I hate this tape from a prosecutor's point of view. First of all, the circumstances. How shady is that for Michael Cohen to secretly record? Arthur Ardal, have you ever secretly recorded one of your clients?
I wouldn't even think about it, let
Exactly.
alone do
But
it.
this is the Trump universe.
Right,
so it's different
but it's on
rules.
Michael Cohen, right? And it shows how. So that's point number one. Point number two, the tape itself, it's good for prosecutors in that it shows for sure Donald Trump knew about the payments to Karen McDougal, knew it was $150,000, and was okay with it. But that's not the crime. I keep saying it. The crime is in the accounting of it, the structuring of it. And when it gets to that, Trump is fairly ignorant of that. And Cohen says to him, and I quote, "No, no, 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 no. I got it." And later he says, leave the stuff, leave the nuances, the details to Alan Weisselberg and me. And that's the defense right there. Donald Trump knew they were paying hush money. Hush money is not a crime. The structuring of it, that was Michael Cohen and Alan Weisselberg. They kept Trump out of it.
That's what we know from the tape.
Right.
I would make the argument that we don't know what Cohen is going to testify to. We do know that Cohen versus Trump would be, or Cohen versus the defense will be a he said, and then the jury's going to have to decide which of them they believe. Yeah. We have seen the prosecutors already extracting testimony from various witnesses that is not favorable to Michael Cohen, because what they're clearly trying to do is take the air out of a big reveal when the defense cross-examines Cohen. But I don't know that all we know is on this tape, that all we can definitively know is on that tape, but I don't know what else is going to be said. And I do think that the documentation in this case, look, I think we have not heard a whole lot about what the actual crime is. We have heard a lot about a conspiracy. We have not heard a whole lot about what the actual crime that they have charged him with. And I think that you will hear the defense talk about that. But I do think that the documentation in the case and that evidence is pretty significant. It's not just relying on testimony.
Yeah, I will say the Trump team feels really good about how the cross-examination of Keith Davidson went today, especially where he was talking about Michael Cohen and how Michael Cohen called Keith Davidson, kind of using him as a therapist to lament the fact that Trump was not going to bring him into the administration. And Keith Davidson testified that Cohen seemed suicidal at that point because of everything that was happening. But where they felt that it was really the most effective was going after Davidson, where it got incredibly contentious for the first time that we've really seen it be that high of a temper, I think, inside the courtroom, as they were drilling down on him, questioning him about whether or not he was extorting Trump, likening the other people that he has worked with when it comes to Hulk Hogan, Lindsay Lohan, Charlie Sheen, and kind of trying to fluster Keith Davidson, which it seemed to be somewhat successful. I don't know how it read in the courtroom.
It read in the court. It was tough sledding. I mean, it was really hard watching it. Just in the
which is
the
not
well
how
of the
he
court.
was 2 days ago.
No, 2 days ago he was polished and he got almost timid. One thing that was very striking to me and my colleagues watching this is that when David Pecker was walking, who was the former AMI head, was walking through his details of his engagement with Michael Cohen, and really this business of sleaze that he was in charge of, he didn't seem ashamed at all. He was almost carefree about the whole thing. Keith Davidson seemed really embarrassed as he was getting pushed on the kinds of deals that he was seeking over and over and over again in terms of pushing celebrities for, I have this client who claims they had an affair with you or this, that, and the other. And in that way, Pecker is actually much more like Trump, where there is just this sort of, I'm not going to be shamed out of the ring. Davidson came off angry, sheepish, uncertain, hostile at certain points, and he got his back up a few times and seemed to find his footing. But it was not a great outing for him. There's a reason, and Emma Bove has been very strong in these cross-examinations.